Not fun
And he goes jumping in. Amazing round. Great hatching from Taz.
Big flashes in and counts the ultimate. Leonard, 20 health left. Oh no, single flash. The shield clutch.
Oh, a blink into all those years of being amazing defense. Champion of the Intel Extreme Masters.
So, welcome back to the Intel Extreme Masters Global Challenge here in New York City at the Comic Con. Joining me is someone who's going to take us through some very, very special content here to finish off today. It's Chet from Valve. And tell us what we're going to be seeing here today for pretty much a exclusive.
Yeah, so this is the first time we're showing the PC version of the game. That should probably be the most popular. And we're going to have some pros playing in the background. A lot of the video that people have seen so far is just people pubbing at Eurogamer Expo or PAX on one of the consoles. So it'll be really interesting to see the pros playing at a little bit higher skill level.
So let's jump into game and give people who maybe aren't familiar with Counter-Strike and more specifically, of course, Counter-Strike Go, a bit of a run-through of the game. Tell us a little bit about Counter-Strike Go and maybe the history for those that don't know about the game.
Well, so the original Counter-Strike 1.6 is what's considered now is 12 years old. Over 25 million people have played it. So it's and right now it's been the past 10 years the #1 competitive PC shooter. And that's what it's about. It's about competition. It's about skill. So it's a game where you enter a match, and everything's equal at that point, and then you are just battling each other based on your skill against their skill. It's the better man wins.
What about Counter-Strike Go? I mean, we've seen Counter-Strike 1.6, which the community of Counter-Strike 1.6, they're kind of getting their time now in Counter-Strike Go. We do have the professional players that are here playing the Intel Extreme Masters Global Challenge. They're actually backstage here playing the game. We've got, if I just press tab, there are some names which you guys at home will definitely be familiar with. On the CT team at the moment, we have well, let's just say some pretty legendary names in terms of American Counter-Strike. Volcano, K-Sharp, Midway, of course, Paulie, who does play for EG, and the last man who didn't change his name, I believe, is Nothing from EG as well, but he didn't change it just yet. On the other team is Davey Flosick from UMX, DeChosen, and of course Khan from Fnatic MSI. He actually flew out here to New York, I believe, just to pretty much get his hands on CSGO and have a talk to you guys. And Cuccio. Talk to us about CSGO and your aim for this new iteration of Counter-Strike.
Well, so as we wanted to come out with a new version of Counter-Strike and really kind of bring it back up to its popularity, one of the things now is 1.6 is really popular in the competitive scene. We're seeing that here today. There's some really great matches, but if you show it to a new player, they look at it and go, hey, it's kind of ugly. It's a 12-year-old game. It is kind of ugly. We admit to that. And so, we wanted to, one way to bring in new players is to update the graphics. If we're going to be updating the graphics, we wanted to make sure we're looking at what the competitive scene wants, what competitive players want. It's just not for the high-end players, but a lot of what they want is what's going to help anybody who wants to play this game competitively at any level.
So you've already announced one massive feature to help you do that, which of course are the two kind of skill levels in the game. You've got a casual mode and a competitive mode. Tell us a little bit about those.
Well, so casual mode is what people have been seeing if they've been seeing videos so far. And it removes some of the kind of metagame strategy of you don't have to worry about your in-game economy. You can buy everything you want when you start out. And it's a fun game for even if you're a hardcore player, but you're just screwing around with your friends and everyone wants to buy an off the very first round. You can. It's got all talk on. There's no friendly damage on. It's just a kind of laid-back, easy way to get in, experiment with the weapons, try out the different weapons. And then competitive mode kind of steps it up where you're going to join skill. It's going to be a ranked matchmaking. So you're going to join in and you're going to be playing against people of your same rank. It's an ELO matchmaking, so it's based on your win-loss performance. It's individual or clan-based, so if you have a clan, you'll get that. And then you'll be playing against people at your same skill level, and as you get better about the game, as you get to know more about the game, you'll be playing against people who equally know more about the game.
I actually have, we did a bit of a question and answer kind of thing on Twitter, where a lot of you guys at home actually sent in your questions, and one of them which kind of ties into this point is, what do you plan to do with the whole ELO system, and aside from matchmaking, do you have any big plans with that?
Well, for the ELO system, really the core of that is about the matchmaking so that you can find a competitive game. What that lets us do also, though, then is make the game for more skilled players to be better. So one of the things when we looked at Counter-Strike Source that we may have heard a little bit was we capped the skill ceiling. And we kind of had to do that because you jump in a game, you don't know who you're playing. Maybe someone who's been playing for 5 years, someone who's been playing for 2 days. And so if you make it kind of unfair, because if there's a lot of skill you learn over time, you're really punishing that player who just jumps in. But now with skill-based matchmaking, you can do those things where those players can get really, really good, and they're not going to harm the people entering in and just learning the game because they're not going to be playing against them.
So you're talking about really building a game for not just the competitive scene, which is very important from, I guess, 99% of people actually watching the stream here. A lot of Counter-Strike 1.6 fans out there, plus the Counter-Strike Source fans that really want to find out what CSGO is going to be like and what's going to be coming to them. How are you going to really push this in terms of a competitive game? Obviously, Valve themselves, they've recently been, working around with the other new game, Dota 2. Yes. You had the international tournament, which was $1 million tournament. And the community, I saw at least 3 questions on Twitter. Is there going to be an international? Maybe an Intel Extreme Masters international for CSGO? Well,
so that is kind of the thing, is there's already, for Counter-Strike, this infrastructure and community that has a bunch of tournaments going on. Not just ESL, obviously, but a lot of different tournaments going on.
Yep.
ESL, obviously, with Intel Extreme Masters, is a very big, prestigious tournament. What we would like to do is help you with that and help grow that. One of the things, again, is it all comes down to, you look at the game, how do you get more people playing it? How do you get more sponsors interested in it? You make it look better. You make it better performing. You make people want to play it. We can't make the 1.6 players turn to CSGO. We can't make CS Source players turn to Go. What we can do is make the best game with their help through the beta, that everyone wants to play it, and then from there start seeing it in tournaments. Obviously, would be fully supportive of that and fully supportive of the competitive scene.
Let's talk about the beta as well, because first of all, what stage, the game that we're seeing here, what stage is it in its development cycle so far?
It's actually in alpha. It's not feature complete. They're going to be seeing some more things in there, and that's one of the things, talking with the pros today, letting them know, when you're giving us feedback, don't look at something and go, oh my God, they'll never change that.
Yeah.
The beta is a true beta. A lot of times you see betas these days where it's really less of a beta and more of a promotional demo.
Yeah.
Because it's happening too late in the cycle for them to make any changes. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to do a beta that was early enough in the cycle so that you'd be able to see changes and we'd actually be able to impact the game based on player feedback. At Valve, we can test the game internally to death. And the minute we release it, within the first hour, we will get more player minutes testing it than all of our player minutes combined. So it's really important for us, for a game that has a pedigree and a history like Counter-Strike, to work with that community to make the new version of it and not just say, no, this is what you want. We want to work with the community to find out what they want. And we reach a shared vision by going through the beta. And so with that, though, I know that the minute we start the beta, the next question is, so when's it going to be released? When's it going to be released? So you have to be patient with that because you're working with us on that. So it's going to be released when you tell us it's ready to release. And that means adding all the features, making sure that gun game's in there, making sure that all the maps are in there, making sure that the low ranked matchmaking, why can't I say that today, is in there. And it's working through the community with all of that that'll let us know when it gets released.
And you just mentioned maps. There were a few videos already released where you touched on this. Actually, I was in Seattle where the Counter-Strike Source players and a few community speakers came over. We didn't get to see Train there. I believe it's in the build that we've got here today.
Correct. I'm not sure which maps do we have here today. We have Dust, Dust 2, Aztec, Nuke, Inferno, Train.
And maybe another one.
Yeah, maybe. No. So actually today, right now, we're actually going back and looking at some stuff people have already seen. Maybe we'll see some new maps in a little bit.
And of course, we're seeing the Dust 2, which is, I guess, the most played map ever in the world, ever.
We should really, at one point, we were thinking of a big number to put up on the website, and probably minutes of this map played would be a very large number. Oh, let's go seconds.
I hope you've got a big, strong server to just host that page because it's going to be a big one.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot of minutes, I guess, with Dust 2. Talk us through Dust 2 because this is the map, like we said, that's been played so much that most people, if you've played a shooter on PC, you've probably heard or seen Dust 2 and played it a lot as well. Tell us about the changes that you've made to this map. Is it more of a visual upgrade? Have there been any big balance changes from your end so far?
Well, so one of our beliefs in this is don't change what's not broken. And this is a map that we're going to consider not broken. The reason so many people play it is because it is so balanced. So some of the other maps we've gone back through and made changes where we didn't see that balance. But for this, it's just about the visual upgrade and making sure, as you do the visual upgrade, that an artist isn't just making some box too short so that your head's not being covered, or little things like that is what will happen. So it's really carefully upgraded in that sense. But it's the same gameplay that people have been playing for years now. It's kind of if you're a big golf master and you want to go and play, the 18th at Pebble Beach, they don't redo that course, right? You want to go play that, and you want to go test yourself against that, and that's what we're doing here.
So what about the maps themselves? I mean, we mentioned a lot of the old classics are in there. Will we be seeing any new maps coming out with CSGO, maybe in the beta or later?
Well, we'll see that with Gun Game in particular. So in Gun Game, there's some maps that are very, very small and very tight and compact. It's pretty much, you can actually turn down a lane and see the other team within a second of spawning. And
so the traditional aim map kind of style.
Yeah, well, it's about very tight, very quick to combat maps. And the fun thing is, so some people have seen that on B-roll and already identified one of the maps is based off of Left 4 Dead 2 or Left 4 Dead 1 location. So you'll see some of that come in, but those maps will be the new ones.
And there's a question here from Twitter that says, does Valve plan to support CSGO with patches if there are going to be bugs in disbalance in a game with maps? I guess what he wants to say is, are you going to be regularly patching the game in terms of its balance, in terms of any map issues that might be coming up? Can we expect regular new content?
Yes. So one of the problems we have when we look at Counter-Strike Source 1.6 is we're hesitant to touch much and change it because people have grown accustomed to that kind of gameplay or those oddities of that map or whatever. So one of the reasons why we want to come out with CSGO is so that we can be more fluid with our updates and change things. Obviously, you don't want to change things so often that people can't grow accustomed to it and get good at those maps. But equally, we'll be able to, during the cycle, update, provide new maps, make changes to maps based on how people play and feedback.
And what about the competitive features, obviously not just for the players, but esports as a whole has a much bigger actual base of people that are watching the streams, that are watching on things like HLTV. First question from the community, a very kind of oftenly questioned question, if that even makes sense, is will there be Source TV, HLTV like spectator mode built into the game? Yeah,
so a lot of what, for the beta, again, think of it more as an alpha, it's not going to be there right off. Because let's make a really good game that people want to watch. But if you look towards Dota 2 and a lot of what they're doing, we'll be inheriting a lot of those changes. So if you saw the International, there's some advancements we've made there. Also in CSS, you're going to be seeing replay mode coming out, or I think it is out in the beta now. We'll be bringing that over as well, because watching people's frag videos is always really cool and stuff, and so we want to empower people to be able to do that. So all of the features you saw before and more.
What about in terms of, because in 1.6 and in Source there are a lot of these servers that run crazy mods and, a lot of plugin-based changes from server to server. You can often go from server to server in the public browser list and end up downloading lots and lots of things that you might not necessarily want to. What kind of mod capabilities are we going to have with CSGO from the get-go? So
first, I got hate mail for making my little joke about surf. So if you want to surf, that's cool. Okay? I'm not going to knock that. We want to make sure that they're able to do everything that they're able to do in CS Source, so that you'll be able to mod it to that level. But with that, we want to make sure that new players can just jump in, because that is a problem, right? If you go into CS Source now, if you're a brand new player, it's overwhelming, your options and what you're jumping into and trying to understand that, why don't I buy weapons? Why are they changing out from underneath me? So we want to make sure that for CSGO, you can enter in and know you're just going to get the standard game that we've created. We'll also give you a way then to enter in the world of the Wild West, of whatever people want to do and however they want to mod it. And it'll be really interesting to see what people do.
And there's been a lot of speculation as to what engine you're specifically using for this one, and then maybe what the system specs are going to be for for people that are jumping into this one. Is it going to be on a similar level to the Source engine in terms of requirements?
Yeah, so we're using what would be considered the Portal 2 version of the Source engine, and what the final specs will be, we'll see. We're not quite sure exactly what that's going to be yet. Obviously, we always try to make sure that we're going as low as we can, and Steam stats lets us, through our hardware survey, lets us kind of take a look and see where people stand, what it would mean if people can't play this. It's going to be DX9. So there's a couple CSS players and 1.6 players that won't be able to make that transition. But other than that, we're trying to get it as low as we can.
And what about my question? I've just completely lost. Where was it gone? Yeah, there we go. So CSS maps and textures and things like that. For the map makers in particular, will they be able to easily transition over to CSGO?
We think so. Pretty quickly after the actual real-world release, we'll try to get the SDK out so that people can move over their old favorites and change them up. And Randy Ledeen, who's helped create the look and feel here, will also release like the zoos, right, where there's the texture packs and you can make that style of map. If anything, hopefully we'll see some more cool stuff because there's some different locations than was with CSS. So there's a bigger expansion of the textures available.
And what changes have you made to some of the other maps? I know when we were in Seattle, we played Inferno, for example, which did have some small changes in there. Which maps have you hit the heaviest with your redesigns?
Probably Dust and Aztec. The two maps that had kind of fallen out of favor that had once been in favor. So Dust adding another way to flank and kind of adding some noise into the underpass so that you could actually sneak down there. And that's always a really fun map when we play internally, just because that's such a quick, fast map. And people have seen that now probably to death. That's what we always take out on the road because it is a quick, fast map. And then Aztec, having lightning strike when somebody crosses the bridge, that may have not been the best choice. So we've removed that. And we've actually removed some parts of the map that weren't really being used, but we found new players would get lost in them.
Yeah.
And in all the maps, we've standardized the spawns. And so that mixes everything up a little bit. It's an odd thing to go back for a game that we've released and say, well, I don't quite understand some of the thinking in some of the maps, where it obviously favored one team over the other heavily. So we wanted to always make sure that when we go back, we want to make sure that the maps are running pretty tight and pretty close. Oh, here we go.
And this is terrain which has not been seen before, I think, at all to the public.
Not clearly, yes. Yeah. And
desperately
trying to jump on that train.
While I was just watching K-Shop there, who was figuring out that he probably couldn't get on that train, with the Deagle. Now, there's one quite startling difference between Source and 1.6, and that is the Deagle. What's the Deagle like in CSGO? What can players expect from it here?
I'm trying. So, well, first of all, it does get a name Desert Eagle and not Nighthawk. I'm trying to think. How would you describe the changes?
CSS Deagle.
We kept the CSS Deagle.
Yeah.
Start there.
Yeah, I don't think that's such a bad idea, to be honest. I mean, we saw a lot of those eco rounds in 1.6.
Nice shot there.
A little bit stale sometimes, let's be honest.
Yeah.
In Source, you get that Deagle, and that can change the whole game. But what other weapon changes have you brought in here? What new weapons have you brought in as a whole? I mean, obviously, we can talk a little bit maybe about the decoy grenade and the Molotov cocktail a little bit later on. But in terms of the guns themselves, the kind of big four, if you want to call them, we've got the AWP on top of it, but the AK, the M4, the Galil, the FAMAS, are the changes there, and how should people expect to see them?
Well, so what we did was we looked. Some of those weapons were chosen 12 years ago for whatever the special forces were using then. Some of these special forces have obviously moved on.
Yeah, I was that was a big point that some guys in the community were making, that we should probably upgrade the weapons at some point.
I'll let you guess the most controversial removal, which is really a renaming.
USB.
Yes, exactly. But it's the P2000 is the new version of it, and it behaves the same way. So I guess if you were really married to the name, because maybe you got it tattooed somewhere,
I'm sure some
you're
people
probably probably going to be depressed. But if it's not tattooed on your body and you're just using it, you could jump over to the P2000 and you're going to be equally happy with it. But it really was just looking at we wanted to base it on real world situations in that sense. So we have real world names of the weapons, and we wanted to update to what people were really using these days.
What about I see here actually the M4. being used, which is still in the game. The AK is still there. How have you changed or tweaked the AK and M4, which are the most popular two rifles in Counter-Strike as a whole?
So those we didn't have to play with as much, right? And they're what you're familiar with. What we really saw was like the submachine gun class of people just not using them, and wanting to make those a more viable alternative. And so there's some tweaking that happened in there. I think probably out of the beta, one thing we'll see is the pricing of those change as we see what people start using and what's too good for this price range.
Yeah.
And so in that case, like you said, when the guys came out to Seattle, everyone played 4 weapons. We didn't get any feedback in any others. We needed some other feedback, and so that was interesting to see how people saw the changes in those weapons. And we'll see that in the beta.
So let's sort then what I mentioned earlier, the real new stuff into Counter-Strike Go, which is let's start with the decoy grenade, a grenade which, on the map it shows as though someone's firing, you get the sound there. What was the thoughts behind the whole addition of the decoy grenade? So
just so you know, a lot of times you see, right, people are taking routes, and they're checking off if someone's taking that route or not, and so throwing the decoy out there makes you hesitant. You see a lot of video that came out of Eurogamer in particular, I saw, of people throwing the decoy directly at somebody. That's not really good. They know where you are, that you're standing there. But the decoy is really good if you want to have the entire team go one way. So you throw the decoy out, it's going to be using a weapon that you're actually using and make the sounds accordingly.
And what about the Molotov? There was some discussion as whether that is too big of a spread, too much damage here and there. How have you gone about balancing the Molotov?
It's through our play tests. I mean, that's something that during the beta we're probably going to see some adjustment on. We thought it was fun that the minute everyone came to Seattle and started playing, it wasn't frowned upon. It was like, okay, we understand how we can use this, and it's nice for like blocking a route when we just need that break to take a look down another route. And, it's, again, one of those weapons you see in the videos of people throwing it at people directly.
Yeah.
Not really a good way to use it. It's about blocking off and removing a route. And so as people learn and they'll play it, they'll get adjusted to it. And that's one of the things we'll see in the beta of, as we make changes, we always have to let that change sit for a while, because people adjust to how to play differently based on that. So.
And what about the taser itself? That's obviously another new addition to the Counter-Strike family. What was the thinking behind the taser? Was that kind of to give a bit more mid-range instant kill?
Oh, no,
kind of long-range knife?
It's the Zeus, and it's all about humiliation, because you can use it only once.
Yeah.
It's $1,000, and you have to be really close to use it. So if you want to throw the $1,000 down just to humiliate somebody, pre-round, you got to make that choice pre-round that you're going to do that. So it becomes interesting in that way.
Think we're going to be seeing taser eco rounds in the future?
Yeah,
it wouldn't surprise me. We're going to see some crazy tactics.
That takes some confidence to do that. That you're willing to throw 2 rounds away just for that one kill.
A comment from, or a question from Corey Dunn, who's been a bit of a Counter-Strike broadcaster himself. The defuse kit. You've gone with a separate system this time. It costs money. Everyone could buy it on the CT side before. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, it's randomly given to one of the CT players.
Two players.
2 players.
So that was some feedback. We originally just had it 1 player, and then when people came up to Seattle, they gave us the feedback of that stops if people had gone the 2 separate routes, and that really hamstrings them. So 2 people get it, and then it makes you kind of have to. You can drop it, yeah, and you can choose around who gets it then. But it makes you kind of decide, right, be able to split up and still handle it. But it's not something that you have to purchase.
I think that balances it out a bit more, being able to drop it and select who you're going to go and switch it off, because we did have that problem where the defuse kit went off to one bomb site, they rushed into the other one, and then you have a little bit of a problem. So another question from Windiano, who says, what will CSGO bring to the table that Source didn't, and what makes this game new enough to try?
Part of it is just the development process in general. I think during CSS, we probably didn't have our eyes open enough to really what the community was talking about and wanting. Like now, if someone would go up to you and say, well CS 1.6 and CSS are the same game, you would punch them, right?
I know a few people who would.
Because they are. And those subtleties, we want to make sure we're recapturing and understanding. And if we're not doing it, it's because we've consciously chose to go a different route and the reasoning for that. And so in that sense of building it with the community and making sure that everybody's involved in that and those choices are to make it competitive and still have that high skill ceiling, I think is what makes it new and different. You know, it's still the hook that CS is really unique of. We haven't touched it for very many years, right? We do some bug fixing and stuff, but we haven't touched the core gameplay. And other shooters come and go, and CS stays around, both Source and 1.6. And I think the reason for that is just that level of skill-based competition that few other games capture. And so our biggest thing we wanted to do when we were making CSGO is to not lose that. We didn't want to worry about what other companies are doing, what other games are doing. They're fun. I play them. But we wanted to stay true to making Counter-Strike a Counter-Strike game.
What's your hope as a developer? Is it to make a new community here, to make a third Counter-Strike community? Is it to really grab one of the two, or is it to unite everyone?
You know, you can't force anybody to change. Obviously, we've learned that. But you know, our hope would be as people see our coming out to events like this, getting feedback from people at these events, getting feedback from the community in the beta, that it's their CS, and it's the CS that they should be playing. But again, obviously, you can't force people to do that. But we would love to see it become the CS everyone's playing. But that's not to say that we're going to do anything to hurt the other CSs or not update them, not do bug fixes. We'll still fully support them. But sure, you know, in our perfect dream world, everyone would move over. We know that's not going to happen. We respect people's decision why. Because, I mean, if you talk to people outside the community, they'll tell you, oh, those 1.6 players, they don't want anything new, blah, blah, blah. Or they have old computers, they can't play it. It's like, no, there's a difference to the game, and they prefer those differences. They prefer the skill changes or the skill that was in 1.6 that didn't come over to CSS, or the way weapons behave, or whatever different particulars they prefer. And it's not based on them not being able to afford new computers. It's not based on them not liking new graphics. It's based on them liking that set of rules and skill sets, right? So as we move over and work with them to make CSGO, hopefully they'll move over as well.
And another kind of little point with that one. What's your opinion on how this game feels right now? Is it more Source-like? Is it more 1.6-like? Is it completely different?
It's different that it falls between the two. Obviously, I think people's first reaction just graphically, think CS Source a little bit more. Even though CS Source, I mean, let's be honest, that's a 7-year-old game that's looking pretty dated as well. But you know, different elements are different ways. So, like, if you throw a flashbang, it's very much more the 1.6 way. It's how it behaves. So there's different elements in both, and we think actually it makes the game have that higher skill ceiling and that bigger depth by bringing the best of both of those to it. I don't think 1.6 I don't think CSS didn't bring anything new that was better. So there's some things we should take from there, and there's some things we should take from 1.6.
What about, this is a question that cropped up quite a lot as well on Twitter, wall banging. It was there in 1.6. It was something that we saw 10 billion frag movies of these crazy one-shot deagle through the wall on train here, for example, a very famous spot. How is it in CSGO? What kind of limitations are there? Is it still there in some respects?
It's there more than CSS, but it's more reasonable than 1.6. I don't think just wildly shooting to go through 5 walls to nail some guy. It's funny when it happens, but there's something weird there to that skill set, right? It's a really abstraction to the world that you're interacting in, and so we kind of have this reasonable rule. And so if it's reasonable that a shot could go through there, and even kind of hyper reasonable, it can go through there. But it can't obviously penetrate a 3-foot wall or something. But you know, CSS, we inherited a lot of the props and a lot of the models from Half-Life too, and they didn't. The fidelity of the hitboxes wasn't that important. And so when they moved over to CS Source, we inherited a lot of those problems, so shooting through car windows became problematic, and there's some hitboxes that weren't as well done as they should have been. And so we've gone back to that. In fact, I mean, we've adjusted hitboxes on players as well to make sure that it's more true to it. CSS had it where it kind of said if you're close enough to the head, we're giving you the headshot. We're saying you've got to hit the head to get the headshot. So the models have that same kind of thing of it's a lot more cleaner, and we're going through and making sure of that. I'm sure we're going to the minute I say that and the minute the beta starts, someone's going to find one that we need to clean up. So,
in a recent video that you released, you said that CSGO is not Counter-Strike 2. This is from Simon, by the way, on Twitter. What is CS2?
CS2 isn't this. I don't know. We don't design in the way that we come down with this big design document and then execute on it. We grow more organically. And this grew organically from us coming back and starting to play CS again and falling back in love with it. I mean, it really is one of those things of you sit down and you start playing. If you've gone away from it and you've come back and started playing, you go back to these places that are really familiar to you, that are places that are as real to me as going back to my hometown.
Yeah.
And so it was that want to kind of bring that back and not worrying about something more. You know, what is CS2? I don't know what it is. When we make it, we'll know what it is.
And there's another question from the same guy. Have you seen the CS Pro mod development and what they've done with Counter-Strike Source? Have you taken any ideas from them? Have you thought about working with them even?
Well, we've looked at it. They do some interesting things. You know, I think just saying, you know, they've made some choices based on the what was available to them and what they can do. I think since we actually own the engine and everything, we can do some different things. And so, I mean, I think they were probably along the track of some of the thoughts we had with the game development. But equally, for us, it's also important that it's just not that high level, that there's an entry point and there's a bunch of stuff outside of the game to help that we want to do as well.
And a question actually relating to consoles, which is not something that pops up in my Twitter feed all that often, I have to say.
Well, but yet there it is.
There it is, right there in black and white and a bit.
But you know, but to be fair, we were talking to K Sharp, Volcano, a couple other guys. You know, everybody plays console games too. The people like to do the 1.6 CSS split. They like to do PC consoles. But come on, what are you playing FIFA on? Or FIFA, excuse me. What are you playing your soccer game on? That's right, I call it soccer.
Soccer,
right?
You're football, right?
You're playing on your consoles probably. So it's not so strange that people play across both platforms.
And that was from Rick, who asked, will the console version of CSGO have a quick turn fast look option like the previous Xbox version of CS?
Not right yet. So we didn't. There's no auto aiming. There's no assist. You know, we're not sure if it's going to happen or not. But if we're going to do cross-platform between the PS3 and the PC, we want to make sure that it's about you using your controller. It's not about something that the game gives you because you're on that platform.
How do you feel about the whole cross-platform thing? I mean, it's been done before to some extent in some games, but now you're going to bring PS3 and PC together. Is this going to be finally where the PC guys show the console guys they're actually a lot better?
We'll see. So we want to make sure that one platform doesn't hamstring the other, and that would be how often we want to update. So like we were talking about, when we release it, still wanting to update frequently. If we're going to be hamstrung from one from the other, then we don't want to connect them that way. Yeah. And that's what cross-platform play does. But it's still interesting to us. I mean, internally we see, obviously, the mouse and keyboard, the fidelity of movement is just a lot higher. But the people who play those games are very similar. So in Left 4 Dead 2, we do in-game polls, and they're the same players. You know, they're not that different. So it'd be interesting to see, and it'd be fun to see the console guy who can hold his own and is ranked up there high and playing against you. You know, you'd have to eat a little crow there. But I think overall you'd see the PC players probably ahead.
I just refreshed the Twitter feed. We've got lots of new questions for that one.
None of them any good. No. Oh, awesome.
I
awesome
think there's some good ones. Let me have a look here. So,
opposing what? Team Fortress Classic opposing force?
Yeah, I think that's in reply to something else.
Okay.
I think we got a different
I say
one
he's asking for us to update Team Fortress Classic. That's some old school stuff.
Do you think about the 1.6 features and settings, for example, you know, the different stuff, the console commands that are important in one game, maybe not so in the other? How important is the whole console going to be? Are you going to have a more in-depth settings page, let's say?
Well, so some stuff will be in the interface and some stuff will still be in the console. Because if you add too much stuff into the interface, you're going to clutter it for anybody to be usable except for the high level. You know, it's fun to see people automatically setting up their odd setups.
And another one, I guess, a final question as we go down. What about the bunny hop mechanic? The bunny hop mechanic, obviously the crouch jumping. One thing that I've seen in Go is that when you jump, when you land, a slight dip as well, where I guess the knee bending, which is slightly different to everything that we've seen before. Talk us a little bit more about the movement between 1.6 between Source and between Go.
It's closer to Source than 1.6. Partially because, the 1.6, your characters are 5 feet tall. We have 6 foot tall characters here. It's something the Source engine does. The air movement and all the crazy air control stuff, obviously we ruined that at 1.6 from 1.5. I know. But, Source it's closer to Source. People can play around with it, and that's one of the things that'll be interesting in the feedback. Because I think during the beta, if we would have just gone to CS Source players and said, give us your feedback because we want to build on that only, the beta would be very different. But since we're saying to all CS players, give us your feedback, it'd be interesting to see how that goes. And, that's one of the things I think is people give us feedback already, just based on what they see in the videos. That's a really bad way to give us feedback. Yeah. Because a lot of things people should wait until they actually get to play it, and that's why we want to have the beta and get it out there as quick as we can to people. Because that's when the feedback gets really interesting, when people get to live with it for a little bit and go, oh, okay, now I understand that this actually doesn't feel so bad, or this feels different, and here's why. And it's going to feel different. And it's okay that it feels different. Does it feel bad? Or does it work bad? Or does it behave bad? Or am I not, I think I should have killed this guy and I didn't kill this guy. Why didn't I? Is it a problem in the game? That'll be the really important thing. So, I can't wait till people get to start playing it and be able to give us that better level of feedback. Well, Chet, thanks so much for joining us here for showing us. Of course, this is only one of 2 slots for Counter-Strike Go that we're going to be having here at the Intel Extreme Masters Global Challenge in New York. Tomorrow we will have an all-star showdown game, a proper casted matchup between Europe and America. That'll be in the same time slot here, the final event of the day here on the main stage. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys. It's been a real pleasure, and we shall see you tomorrow for some more amazing action here from the Intel Extreme Masters Global Challenge in New York. See ya.
And he goes jumping in. Amazing round. Great hat-trick from Taz.
He flashes in and casts the ultimate. Lena, 20 health left. Oh, no, single flash. The shield clutch.
Oh, a blink into all those units. An amazing defense. Champion of the Intel Extreme Masters.